Okay, so 100 minute fact about the Negro. J. Rogers, peace to the great man. Rest in power. Now, I had these as memes. Didn't even know I had the book in my damn library. Out of line. Alright, so you see, the Negro race of Africa perhaps did not originate there, but Asia and Oceania. Oceania is Australia area. The earliest inhabitants of Africa were not black, but brown. Today, the people of mixed and unmixed Negro descent living in Asia and Oceania probably exceed in number the present Negro population in Africa. India has millions of Negroes. The purest Negro type of Southern Asia. In 1923, Dr. Joseph Rock, United States Department of Agriculture, discovered hitherto unknown Negro races, the Nakez. Hold on, Nakez? Oh, Nakez. I was gonna say niggas. I was like, hold on. In number of Southern China. In 1934, that guy discovered an unknown Negro population in New Guinea near Australia. He reports that they have a civilization superior to their neighbors who live under white rule. Oh shit, I hope I was on there good enough. Either way, you can pause it and read it if you want to. Now, the way this book is set up, for those who don't know, he makes statements. Oh, let me just go here since I'm right here. Since I'm right here, you know what I'm saying? The most ancient name for so-called black people is Nesu, or Nubian, Ethiopian, and more.
Conversation, stop it.
I'm a Moor, and got sense enough to know I'm a Moor, and ain't gonna never argue with you that I'm not a Moor, and wouldn't come in your house or come among you and say I'm a Moor if I didn't feel in my heart, in my mind, in my soul that I am.
If you don't understand that, get that together real quick.
And recognize how you've been miseducated, not just by Europeans, but by your own. These people know that you're not black. They don't doubt it. They know that you're not black. And they know that you're Moors.
From ancient Egypt, Negroes and Negritas. And he goes on to say Negro may be the oldest. But I would differ. I would beg to differ. Right? But you know what it is. So 17, let's make the proofs for 17. He made the statement that the Negro may be from Asia, not Africa. All right. One of the principal reasons for this theory, as that person says, is all Negro tribes in Africa assert that their first ancestors came from the East. That's what they say. Now, we claim, some of y'all still claim we come from them. Then that mean our ancestors come from there too, right? So we Asian too, right? Or Asiatic, like the prophet said, right? There is a translation of the work by blah, 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 blah. This was true even in ancient Egypt. The celebrated Negro queen of Egypt, Hatshepsut, I can't never say them damn Egyptian names, right? Sent an expedition eastward to Punt in Arabia, from which the land of Egyptians believe their ancestors came. Of the Bushmen, the Hottens, my bad. Holding this phone, it's getting kind of annoying. All right, matter of fact, as you can see, one of the foremost authors, Negro, says the deductions point rather to India as the origin birthplace of the Negro. So this is why he says these things. All right, he has reason to believe these things. You know, we have to let go of this Africa, we from Africa shit. All right, it's deeper than that.
It's going to be excellent. Watch. So they call themselves descendants of African slaves, okay? And this is not to diss them. If they believe that they were the slaves from Africa, they're cool. They should go back to Africa. They should do that. Marcus Garvey wasn't from America, you know. He was from, you know, he wasn't from America proper, as they say. And I don't try to make one against the other, but we've been being invaded by our brothers and sisters ever since they shipped us out of here. By people who look like us, but they're not us. So look. What does Africa mean? First of all, Africa is a Latin word. So whenever you're talking about Latin, you know what you're talking about, right? You're talking about the Moors, right? You're talking about Carthage, right? You're talking about Phoenicia, right? You're talking about Tartary, right? You're talking about Barbary, right? Because those are the only Latin-speaking people, and you're talking about all the Latin-speaking people that speak Latin that were connected to the empire over here. Because Charles V spoke English and Latin, and he was a king in the Inca Empire. Where do you think those noble Moors that actually wasn't down with the European, with the bleaching out of the peoples and all that, where do you think they went? It wasn't like everybody. So boom, Africa. Means terror. Now terror can be taken two ways. Terror meaning earth and terror meaning scary, terror. And isn't Africa, they terrorize it, don't they? African land, Libya. Meaning the original land of Africa was Libya. And what is Libya? The Carthaginian territory as a province of Africa, as a continent. So Africa as a continent was called Libya when it was under as a Carthaginian territory in the province of Africa, continent, adjective, not a living thing. Africus, meaning a fur, and African, a word of certain uncertain origin. Look, they say it's uncertain origin, but look what they say. But you know it's a Latin word. So if you know it's a Latin word, then it's not uncertain. You see how they lie to you, how they write the actual lie in the truth, and how you just don't read it. The Latin word originally was used only in reference to the region around modern Tunisia, and it gradually was extended to the whole continent, a derivation from the Phoenician cognate of the Morabic or Arabic afar, which means dust or earth, or the dust earth is tempting. In the Middle English word, it means afrique or afrique or a freak. A freak. Let's read what, so they say they're African. So that means then that they are the property of the Carthaginians. Islam, we just read that, right? Africa means the Carthaginian territory as a province because it was not under the jurisdiction or did not mean the whole continent. And at one time, it only represented the dominions of Tunisia. So how, and then gradually was extended to the whole continent, which means then we gradually extended the dominion outside of that, but we wasn't really rocking with it like that. We only dealt with the coast areas, Mauritania, Morocco, Tunis, Algiers, Egypt, Ivory Coast, the homie. Like, you see what I'm saying? We on the coast. We not going in there like that. Because them people is dealing with savagery. They dealing with idolatry. They dealing with genetic manipulation. They're sticking bones in their mouths. They sticking plates in their face. They drinking snake venom. They having sex with babies, even though that they know that they have AIDS. They're practicing female castration, but they call it mutilation. No, it's castration because they want to keep the female prepubescent. So no matter how old the female gets, she's only old to a certain age. So it always feels like they're having sex with a little girl. And you want to claim, these people want to claim descendancy from these people? Look, slave, sclave. From the medieval Latin, they go Latin again. See? Africans, slaves. African, Latin word. Slave, Latin word. Nigeria, English word. Sudan, French word. These niggas don't have nothing for themselves. They don't own nothing because that place was never no place to live like that. That was a place for you to go bubble your money like New York. It was like New York. New York is nice, but do you really want to live there? And if you do live there nice, you got to live with it on a certain level. You got to be on your Carthaginian steeds, right? So that way you can get your African and Slavic slaves to do your work for you, right? It's chess, not checkers, Moors, I'm telling you. So look what it say. It say Greek sklavos. See, everybody else is naming them. They don't even have a name. They done listed in the first word, we done listed the Moors, the Latin, the Byzantine, the Christian Moors, the Greek, that's Macedonian, that's still Latin, and that's still Carthage because Carthage put Greek under the yoke through Macedon. Slovenian, Slav, 3 different nations own these people from ancient times, before we even get to what the word means. So when a black man is calling himself what? An African slave, we're gonna put together like the jumble at the end of Soul Train. We're gonna put it together what it really means. So it says, probably related to slovo, a word or speech which suggests the name originally identified a member of a speech community, right? Old Church Slavonic, Nemesi, Latin, Germans, right? Related to Nemu, which means what? Dumb, right? The Greek, heretophones, which means what? Foreign, literally of a different voice. Now remember, the different voice. That's significant. I'm gonna tell you why. Which meant both race and language. So let's put it together. An African slave, a descendant from an African slave, is somebody who is saying their ancestors were under the jurisdiction of the Moorish, Carthaginian, Tartarian, Barbarian Empire, and who specifically were under the jurisdictions of the beys of Tunisia and Barbary, who were from the dust of the earth, and because the ground was tempting, we then hooked them up or bred them with the wild Slav, which means the dumb Germans from a foreign land who spoke with a different voice and who were dumb in both race and language. Islam? Am I inventing it? This is exactly what they say they are. Because Africa is not a people. It was a designation. It was a sign of territory by our people that actually had a nationality. So the term afar for an African word is actually not even it. It means afar, the afar land, the Terra land, the Africa land, the afar land that we call Libya. The Old English Africanus. Now, this is Africa again as a noun, right? Meaning that it's a person, right? Which means that it's what? A thing. Which means what? It's a corporation. It's not alive. Have you read anything that says these people are alive yet? Have you? Have you read anything that says the African slave or the Africa or slave is an actual living being? Have you? Just because it speaks don't mean it's human. And it says it speaks of a different voice. So I'm going to tell you why it speaks with a different voice. It's not just the lies they tell. So the Old English Africanus, plural, native or inhabitant of Africa. But to be a native inhabitant of Africa means you have to be what? Because what was Africa? Africa was what? We just said it. A Carthaginian territory. So in order for you to be an African, you have to be a what? A descendant of the Carthaginians. And who were the Carthaginians? They were the Phoenicians. And who were the Phoenicians? They were the Hittites, the Canaanites, the Amorites, right? And who were they? The ones who went into covenant with the tribes of Israel, right? So in order for you to be an African, you first have to have a nationality, which means you have to be a Moor. So do you see who is at the top of the food chain? These niggas are small. They're not even stupid, they small. Used of white residents of Africa in 1815. Do the knowledge. So you're saying that in 1815 there were white Africans used by black residents of the US from 18, when it especially meant one brought from Africa, and sometimes was contrasted to a native-born Negro, an adjective by 1560s pertaining to Africa or Africans, meaning people who were under the jurisdiction of the Carthaginian Empire because they had no nationality and therefore were not respected under the family of nations, under the law of nations. That's why every other nation in the world is listed in ancient times, and the only people that you see listed heavy in Africa are the people that were on the coast dealing with the greater empire. Because all the interior Africans were Christians. So when the Portuguese and the Spanish went to receive African slaves, they were buying them from Moors because these were the descendants of the people, the Christians that fought against the Moors, and the Moors locked them up as POWs, as prisoners of war, and then sold them off, which was the ancient custom.